Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor, hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy.
Matt, it's the offseason, right? And the offseason topics are aplenty right now for the New Orleans Saints. So let's just dive right into it. I guess the biggest and most recent news occurred kind of the middle of last week when the Saints announced that they were restructuring Derek Carr's contract. It saves them about $23 million in cap space. But what it does is it ties the Saints to Derek Carr for at least 2025. What do you make of that move?
Yeah, I mean, the way I had it explained to me by someone is that the Saints still have a little bit of flexibility if they want to get out of that contract in 2025. It's just now much harder to do so. By restructuring the deal, they moved most of his $30 million base salary to a signing bonus that's now kind of extended over the length of the rest of the deal. So they're kind of just kicking down a can on the road, and it makes it kind of harder to get out of it in 2025, but it's not impossible.
Well, a person who's going to be vital to Derek Carr's success in New Orleans is new offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak. Look, this is a hire that they waited till after the Super Bowl to make. It kind of seems like he was their top guy all along. Thoughts on the Kubiak hire?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Dennis Allen said that this is the offensive scheme that they wanted, that has been having a lot of success in the NFL. And I think Kubiak is someone that, he grew up in the system under his dad, obviously, with Gary Kubiak, and then has had some experience calling plays, which I think is important. As young as Klint Kubiak is, he's not necessarily like going into this extremely raw. He called plays in Minnesota, he called plays in Denver. I just think it was a pretty smart hire overall, and I see why they landed on him.
Look, as far as Kubiak goes, yes, they love this guy. He was their top option. The Saints have a lot of holes to fill. They got a lot of free agents out there. Is there any free agent with the Saints right now that you just think that they have to bring back?
I don't know, not necessarily. I think Andres Pete would maybe qualify as that. He did a really good job at playing left tackle, but I think the draft is a position where if you're looking with the 14th pick, that is a spot where you could get necessarily his replacement. Now, with Ryan Ramczyk and his uncertain injury history or shaky injury history with what happens with his knee, maybe you need a right tackle as well. So I think that complicates matters. But of those, I don't necessarily think that they're must brings back. I think Zach Bond had a really nice year. I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to play elsewhere to land a role where he could play a little bit more consistently. But yeah, I would say Pete and maybe Bond.
As far as the offensive line goes, I get that, so many mock drafts come out and they're like, oh, well, the Saints are going to take an offensive lineman in the draft. Is there anybody in free agency you could see them target, before that draft comes around?
I don't know. But you mean for the offensive line or just in general?
Just in general.
Oh, yeah. Well, just in general, I mean, I think pass rush is really interesting. There are going to be some veterans on the market that maybe want to take a one-year deal to restore their stock. The guy that I've kind of mentioned, and I don't necessarily know if this is an actual possibility, but I covered him in Washington, was Chase Young. He was traded to San Francisco, had a pretty good game in the Super Bowl, but his stock necessarily isn't what he would probably want it to be as he looks to secure kind of a big contract. So maybe he needs somewhere to restore his value for 1 year. And I think New Orleans is a great opportunity for someone like that, where, that there's a clear pass rushing need. It's a really good defense overall. And Dennis Allen, I think, is a smart defensive coach. So, I could see them targeting a pass rusher given their struggles in that area last year, but I do think they'll primarily look through the draft.
Well, let's get into the draft a little bit, right? The Saints have the 14th pick right now in the first round. What do you think would they do with that pick? Do they target offensive line like we talked about? Did they go pass rush? They could even go receiver if they do best available. What do you think they do with that 14th pick?
Yeah, it's still really early to tell, but I do think the positions that you just mentioned kind of make the most sense. Either going with offensive line, the way that this draft is going to shake out is you probably have 4 quarterbacks in the top 8. That really puts the Saints in a good position to land kind of a premium player of another position, whether it's tackles. Joe Alt, who's the top tackle in this draft, will probably be gone by then. There's the Penn State kid who is likely gone as well. But you're looking at someone like J.C. Latham out of Alabama. He could make some sense for them. And then on the pass rushing side, you have Florida State's Jared Verse. He really kind of fits the profile of the type of pass rushers the Saints like and all that. So I kind of do think they'll look at the lines first, but you never know. Like Brock Bowers might be there from Georgia, and he might be too tempting to pass up. But I do think the lines make the most sense.
As far as that 14th pick, since we were talking about it, you mentioned a guy like Brock Bowers, who every team in the NFL seems to love right now, right? I mean, he's one of the most coveted prospects in this draft. If the Saints are sitting there at 14 and somebody they really love is on the board, and let's say it's pick 9, do you think the Saints would trade up, and what would they have to do to get up there that high?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, we've seen Mickey Loomis and his staff do that before. They've definitely been aggressive in years past. Now, I think you could argue that it has cost them in recent years. I think trading up for Chris Olave was a really smart decision. But, you look at Trevor Penning, you look at Marcus Davenport, those deals where they traded up haven't necessarily panned out. So where the Saints are as a franchise right now, I don't necessarily know if they could afford that type of swing given what it would cost to move up. I mean, if you're moving up 5 spots, maybe you're giving up a second rounder or a third. I mean, the Saints don't have an extremely rich capital of assets to be parting with in the first place. So I don't necessarily know how realistic it is, but given Mickey Loomis's history, I'm sure he'll explore it at the very least.
I'm sure most Saints fans would not like if this happened, but I mean, it is a possibility. They restructured his contract a few weeks back to kind of make it easier for the Saints to get rid of him. And, you got a guy like Alante Taylor and Paulson Adebo playing well. Is there any situation in this draft where you could see the Saints maybe dealing Marshon Lattimore for a higher pick?
I don't know. That's just the truth. I mean, I think there are pros and cons for doing it. I don't necessarily know what his market would be. I mean, you look at kind of similar situations around the NFL. The Jaguars when they traded. Oh no, I'm sorry. With the Rams when they traded Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins, they traded him for like the 77th pick overall in the draft. Now, would the Saints be happy with a 3rd round pick for Marshon Lattimore? I don't know, but it's something that I hope to get an answer at the combine. It's kind of maybe my biggest question about this team right now is how open are they actually to trading Marshon Lattimore? But right now, I do think I wouldn't blame them for exploring it, but I just don't know if they are.
You mentioned earlier the run on quarterbacks that they're going to have, right? I mean, there should be 4 easily inside the top 12. After that, it kind of seems like, there's a guaranteed top 3 with Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Then there seems to be a little bit of a gap. Then you have Michael Penix, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy. So, there's certainly a pecking order in this year's draft. I'm obviously not talking about first round, but I mean, everyone heard the interview Jameis Winston did lately, and he said, my goal is to one day be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't see that happening in New Orleans. So, with his time probably limited in New Orleans, maybe later in the draft, could you see the Saints taking a shot at a quarterback?
I could, but remember, they also drafted Jay Kaner last year, right? So I think they're clearly grooming him to be the backup quarterback behind Derek Carr. It really just kind of depends on how this draft shakes out. I really don't see them, especially in the first round, like Bo Nix or someone like that, Michael Penix. I just don't know if that makes a lot of sense for them with where they're at right now and trying to capitalize on this window that they have. But, I going back to what you said about the 4th guy, I think J.J. McCarthy has kind of established himself early on here as that 4th guy. So that leaves kind of Bo Nix or Michael Penix or, take your choice. But I just don't know. I don't necessarily think it's as strong of a possibility as maybe I thought a few months ago when Derek Carr was struggling.
Matt Paris with us, Saints beat reporter for the Times-Picayune and the Advocate. Matt, you said you're heading up to the Combine tomorrow. Jaden Daniels already said he's not going to throw in this Combine. Caleb Williams is not either. Drake May, he's kind of mum on it. We don't know what's going to happen. What are your thoughts on guys that decide to throw and not throw? I mean, do you think there's a huge pro or con either way, or is it just kind of what teams have already seen of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, teams largely go with what they see on tape and what they hear from players when they talk to them at the combine. I think the interview aspect of the combine is much more important than throwing on open air. I think it helps. It can help in some certain situations, but I'm not going to knock the guy if he doesn't want to throw. They still have their pro day and stuff, so it is a little disappointing from like a fan perspective, but I don't necessarily think teams will mind it as much.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.